Hello everybody, this is Graeme, and today I'm going to be looking at a game called Kingdom Defenders. Now in this game, each player takes on the role of a courageous hero helping to defend their kingdom from the hordes of Grugog, I think it is, who are trying to take over your kingdom. The players are going to do this by performing heroic deeds, going on adventures, and deploying troops to the area threatened by the horde, which is the city wall. Now this is a basic worker placement game where the board is going to be split into several different areas. Some areas you can only have one worker, and other areas you can have multiple. And one of the twists of this worker placement mechanism is that this board is split into two halves. And as soon as you place your worker on the top half of the board, you can no longer place a worker in the bottom half. So when do you make that jump between going outside of the city? Now the actions you're going to be doing are pretty straightforward. Collecting resources, completing the deeds, and going on adventures with those resources you collect, and of course deploying troops. But the game does have variable setup, so each game will be slightly different on how you achieve these actions, which is always nice. So, will this game be worth holding on to and holding back the horde, or should you just kind of toss it to the horde and let it take it away? Let's get it to the table, see how it's played, and we'll come back with my final thoughts on Kingdom Defenders.
Here's Kingdom Defenders set up for 3 players. I am showing the standard intro game setup. Lay out the random character cards face up, then shuffle the building tiles face down and place them on their building spaces, and turn over only the first one. Ground counters touch in its spot, and deeds are split into 1 and 2 and placed off to the side and reveal the top ones. Shuffle the adventure deck and fill in the spaces following the arrows. The rewards are mixed up and reveal 2 for their spaces. The horde deck is prepared based on the number of players, with a special horde card placed off to one side. The horde marker starts on the horde deck, and the wild tile starts on the A side. The 4 dice are placed on their spots, and all other items are placed off to one side. Each player takes all of their pieces of a color, including the 9 discs, and putting the others aside. The extra is only used for certain buildings. Randomize the turn order, then place player 1 score disc on 20, next on 21, and so on. Set all players on the initial spaces of the force and magical track. Each player gets 2 fate cards, which are used for the initial resources and at the end of game scoring. They keep one and discard the other, and then take all the starting resources on the one that they kept and place them behind your screens. During the game, your resources, rewards, and adventure cards are kept behind your screen, everything else is in front of you. The game is played over at the maximum of 6 rounds, and each round you'll be going through a number of phases. At the end of the game, the player with the most points is the winner, but if the players let the hordes breach the walls, then the game will immediately end and you go to scoring without playing for the full 6 rounds. Let's go through a round, and we'll start in round 2 as there are a few things skipped in the first round. First, you remove the round marker. In round 2, you'll introduce the horde, so flip over the top horde card. It will show you where the horde marker starts, and therefore how many rounds before they reach the wall. It will also show you the forces required to defeat the horde. In rounds 4 and 5, introduce a special horde card, and if a new horde card comes out in one of those 2 rounds, you just use the special horde card. Next, during the Favor of the King phase, the player with the fewest victory points will roll all the dice, once per player. If there's less than 4 players, the roller chooses which die to exclude. Then you draft the dice in reverse victory order and claim the reward on the die and place it on the tower. Next comes the placing of the disc section. In turn order, you will place your discs on the action spaces, but they will not be activated until the next round. Most spaces only have 1 player's discs on them, and some spaces require extra payment like an extra disc, money, or even losing victory points. Players continue to place discs until all players have passed. Now there are some rules for placing. Each player can only have 1 disc per area, A, B, and C, and D. In the buildings and adventure areas, you can occupy multiple spaces. Another critical piece about the disc placement is that the board is split into 2 halves, a city half and a kingdom half. You can continue to place discs in the city half until you've placed your first disc in the kingdom half. As soon as you place a disc in the kingdom half, you can no longer place a disc in the city half. Now the wall section is separate and it can be placed at any time. Once the disc placement phase is done, you go through each area in order and resolve the discs. The A area is triggered in character order, not player order. Then you go to Area B, and starting with the start player, they will activate all of the discs in Area B in any order they want, then remove them after they've been activated. There are 3 areas of B that all work slightly different. The deed section requires you to show that you have the required resources to complete a deed. You keep the resources, they are not discarded. You then take the deed and place it behind your screen and select one of the face-up rewards, or one off the top. Each one also comes with a bonus. The buildings in Section B, when activated, will allow you to perform the action printed on the building. The adventures in Section B will allow you to claim one of the adventures. Here you do have to spend the resources listed on the card that you have your disc on, and you might get wounds. When you get your first wound, you take one of your discs and place it on the wound track. You can have a maximum of 4 wounds, but you only ever use 1 disc. When you've completed the adventure, take the appropriate reward and place the card behind your screen. The rewards will be coins, victory points, and loot, those type of things. You can also gain strength and magic. Increase your marker on those respective tracks. If it reaches or passes a certain spaces, you will get the depicted reward. The victory points are the ones that are going to be used for end of game scoring. You will multiply the level you've reached on the tracks and multiply that by either legendary weapons or the arcane tomes. You can also gain a potion which can be used to heal you. You can get resource cubes or maybe a plus or 2 on the respective color. These are discounts to further adventures. Once all players have activated their discs in Section B, we move to Section C, and this is done in top-down order. The players can add troops to their camp, which are the cubes, and receive victory points. An important note is that no player can contribute more than what their camp can hold. Also, you cannot contribute if the number and type of troops required to defeat the horde has already been reached. You cannot overpay to defeat the horde. If you cannot, or choose not to contribute when your disc is in this area, you're going to be losing 2 points. We then move to the hordes phase. You'll either defeat the horde, or it will advance. To defeat the horde, there must be the exact number of magic and weapon cubes in all the players' camps. All players who contributed to defeating the horde get a reward. Then, all players who have at least this many cubes in their camp get a reward. If several players tie for the same level of reward, then no player gets that reward. If the players did not contribute enough to defeat the horde, then just advances 1 step on the track. But if the horde reaches the wall, then the negative side of the horde card happens. All players lose this many fame points minus how many cubes they have in their camp. All players within at least 3 cubes in their camp get this reward, and whichever player has the fewest resources in the camp receives this. Then, flip the tile to its B side. Now if the wall card already was on its B side, then the game ends immediately and you go right to final scoring. Whenever a horde is defeated, or it reaches the wall for the first time, the horde card is changed. Return all camp resources to the supply, remove the current horde card and reveal a new one. If you're in the 4th or 5th round, you use the special horde card on the appropriate side and remove the rest of the horde deck. Finally, you'll activate Area D, which will define the new turn order for the next round. At the end of the round, there is a maintenance to be done where you're going to be revealing new deeds, new reward tiles are placed, discard any adventures cards on the X marked spaces, and refill the area and then reveal the next building. At the end of the game, after 6 rounds, you're going to be adding up your points. Each loot you have is a point, sets of different runes are worth points, having multiple trophies gets you points, then you multiply the number of legendary weapons you have by your position on the might track and score that many points, and do the same for the arcane tomes and your magic track. Subtract a point for each wound you have, and finally score your destiny card. Then the player with the most points is the winner. Let's get back to see what I thought about Kingdom Defenders.
Let's start with the theme and components. The theme on this one is strange. They've come up with a new world where the players are protecting Sandstorm, which is the area that you're in, which is being besieged by the legendary, again, Grugog, I think it is. And each section of the rulebook, they kind of go over the theme. You know, there's part of the introduction here about the theme, and then here on how to play is part of the theme. The actual game is completely devoid of theme. There is no mention of the theme in the components at all. No little backstory on the characters helping you out. No text of the deeds of what you're doing or the adventures you're going on. So the actual game itself is lacking of theme. And although the theme sounds interesting, as soon as you start to set up the board, the theme completely disappears. For the components, they're fine. There's nothing spectacular about them. They're functional and good quality, but kind of nothing stands out as particularly good nor bad. And I feel that kind of continues to the gameplay as well. It's a good, solid, but I feel completely forgettable game. Now, there are several things I liked about the game. The wall mechanism was actually interesting. When do you make that leap to go outside the city, knowing that your pieces may have left something behind? But it might be worth to be the first one to go on the adventures. Like there's an adventure you really want to go on, you've collected all the resources, you want to get there first, but are you leaving something behind in maybe those buildings? And I enjoyed the semi-co-op element to the game with the troops. Do maybe convince another player to go there, but then you go afterwards and select a higher spot to fulfill the horde requirements. It's going to cost them 2 points. I must admit, it is fun to do every once in a while. And letting the horde breach the wall is not necessarily a game ender. Are you far enough ahead in the points to allow that horde to breach the wall a second time and go right to scoring? Now, the game is only 6 rounds long, so it's usually not going to happen until the end of the game anyway, but it is an option. And I kind of like that, being able to control that end of the game. It has what I consider good worker placement anxiety. You know, each time other players are placing their discs, you're kind of hoping they don't take the spot that you really want. Now, you usually have a plan, but the game is open enough that you can change your plan mid-round if other players are taking up all the spots that you were planning to go to. The game also plays well at the higher player counts. At 2, I didn't find it as enjoyable as it was almost too open, but at 4 players, I found it was much more invested in what the other players were doing. I'm watching where every single one of those player discs go. I also like the variable setup. You know, between the characters and the buildings, there is a whole sheet here that kind of goes through everything. The higher level characters and buildings introduce kind of more player interaction, like wounding other players or taking their stuff. That part I didn't overly like, but the ones where you get to manipulate the board, you know, using a building someone else is already using, or completing an adventure before that area is triggered. And there were kind of a few of those type things where you could do that, or the one that allows you to do a deed before Area B is activated. I really kind of like those because it's like, okay, you took the deed, I'm going to take this character and try and jump you in that queue. So as you can see, there are several things I liked about the game, but they just didn't add up enough to make this game kind of stand out from the crowd. There's nothing terrible about this game, but there's also nothing here that's going to make you remember the game. So would I recommend this one? It's tricky, but I think I would. I like the main mechanisms of the game and the good level of anxiety that the players have. I like the variable setup between the characters and the buildings. And I also liked how the buildings kind of progress throughout the game and opening up more spaces as the game progresses. I thought the horde mechanism and that piece of kind of being semi-co-op was interesting. I'm not a huge semi-co-op player, but I kind of like that little bit in this game. I also like that there was a reason maybe that you want to let the horde breach the wall at some point. For the negatives, I would say kind of the lack of theme actually really hurts this game. And it would have been relatively easy to add like little touches to the characters and the deeds and the adventures, just giving them names at least. The game doesn't scale down very well. It's definitely better at 4 than at 2 players. But there's not a lot negative for this game. But I am going to give this game a 7 out of 10 in the Dice Tower Seal of Approval. And the main reason is I'd happily play this game. And if you saw it on a shelf and wanted to play, I would encourage you to play it. And I'm sure you're going to have a good time. I just don't think in a week or a month's time you're going to remember the game at all. What the game does, it does well, but it doesn't do it enough to really move it ahead of similar games. When someone asks me to play a worker placement game, this is unfortunately not one I will reach for, but I would happily play it if you wanted to play it. But that's it for the moment. Until next time, thanks for watching.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching another video from the Dice Tower. Hey, you want to learn more about us, communicate with us? We have a Facebook group, we have a Discord channel, lots of different ways to get involved with the Dice Tower. You can find that in our Linktree link below. So just click that, it will take you and you can communicate with us on Facebook, join our Facebook groups. There's lots of cool things that you can find and become part of the Dice Tower. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Tom Vassell.